Four, three, two, one. All right, it looks like we're live, and I've got it shared in a couple of different places, so I don't know if I even have to share it any more than I was planning. Cool,
Cool.
very cool. Well, hey everybody, this is Brendan Allen Barrett of the business of family and selling. That's the name that we're going with for now. This is all we're to the second episode of this grand experiment. So if you guys have insight or suggestions on a better, catchier name for this show about family and selling and the implications of one on the other, feel free to drop that in the comments as you guys are getting in here. Today, I'm with Landon Porter, and per usual, we're talking about the business of family and selling. Let me pull up your bio here.
It's a short one in there.
All right, so I just got into this for the first time, and I was laughing as I was reading it. So Landon is a native of Colorado, a father of two, husband of one, selling for 15 years in two different industries, a rebel black sheep, and he follows his own path. So Landon, why don't you kind of fill in the blanks here as people are showing up, and a reminder to those watching, as you enter the live stream, say hi in the comments, give us some likes and some thumbs up. Let everybody else on Facebook know that this is the place to hang out. So Landon, I've given that short, brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and tell us a little bit more of this Rebel Black Sheep life of yours?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show today, Brennan. I appreciate it. I have really enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of weeks. You'll have to pardon me. I've got a dog down here who's pestering me as well. So I guess to fill in the blanks, really kind of who I am is I learned a skill set to provide for my family. And the way that I learned that skill set of sales didn't feel good, didn't feel right. Thanks, Michelle. And so I kind of had to like flip the script, so to speak, on how I approached getting clients, managing my clients, selling what I sold, and really leading my life. And interestingly enough, that kind of stemmed from my kids going from 5, 6, 7 years old to like 8, 9, 10 years old. Kids make a really radical change at that stage. And I'm going through this process of not liking my career and my clients. At the same time, I was going through my kids aren't responding to me the way that they were. And what ended up happening was basically changing the way I managed relationships. All of that to say this. About a year and a half ago, my wife and I decided that we were going to create a parenting course for parents dealing specifically with preteens. We spent all of last year building a community. We started creating a couple of courses, and then I found a Facebook ads course to go promote that. And in this process, I have a bunch of people telling me that, hey, you should teach how you sell. And where I ended up now is basically teaching people how to sell from my perspective, which is all about being who you are and how you are, all based on your character and your personality, which translates directly into managing the relationship with your kids and your spouse and your clients. So I hope that fills in some gaps.
Yeah, awesome. So now your partner doesn't do, or your wife doesn't do exactly what you do. She's in operations management. Where do you guys meet as far as your goals and plan for your family? What is the vision that you guys share, and what was the journey to land on a shared vision, or were you guys there from the get-go?
Our relationship is a little different than most in that it's always been the two of us. And it doesn't matter what we're doing or where we're headed, as long as we're together, we're happy. The only other relationship I've ever seen that operated that way was my grandparents, my dad's parents. They never argued. They never fought. They were always, it was the two of them heading in the same direction. And I think really it comes down to, we have the same set of values. We have the same set of values as to how people should interact with each other, how people should treat the planet, really what life is about, the experience of living and sharing and being together. The place that we meet on that is I have to be whole for me to be whole for her. She has to be whole for her to be whole for me. So it's that weird catch-22. I have to be totally taken care of, and that includes her part of taking care of me for me to then be able to do the same for her. I think we have a very mutual understanding of selfishness, selflessness, if that makes sense.
No, I think, well, you're kind of speaking to the choir, and it's, I'm not as far along in my journey, obviously, as you are. I'm a father of not quite 3 years now, and I'm not married yet. I'm engaged to be married, and so I'm learning more and more how to take care of myself so I can be there to take care of everyone else. And a big part of that for me is discipline, being able to flip the switch and check out of one thing, i.e. work usually, so that I can get to the gym and kind of jolt myself from the work mindset to be entirely present when she gets home from work and when Liam is back from daycare or with us, as opposed to spending time with his mom. Is there anything in particular that you have to do to keep yourself right and keep yourself whole that's entirely your responsibility, as opposed to, the way that your wife loves you to help you be whole?
Yes. And some people have an easier time doing this than others. I very much need my own space and my own time. My wife and I both work from home together and have for several years. And I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with a couple of things. Our kids are older. Our relationship is more settled and situated. Our habits and patterns that we've created, we've had the time to put in and build. It's not always been as easy as it is now to manage this life. But in that process, I need my own space and time. And the way that I get that is I'm generally the first person up, but I'm always the last person to go to bed. I've found that I can operate on a little bit less sleep than everybody else in the house. I have to have my own space and time. And the way that I do that is I get up in the morning, I have my thinking and my creative in my quiet family time, and then the kids go off to school. My wife and I both do our work thing, and then dinner time is our family time generally. And then after the kids go to bed, Ash and I hang out for a little bit, and then she goes to bed. I've got generally an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I will typically figure out what's going on in my own head. And that keeps me grounded to where I can deal with this stuff that happens. Because, I mean, let's be real. It doesn't matter how well you plan. Life happens. Mm-hmm. And you have to be totally present when that happens, especially with your family. And the only way that you can do that and be present is recognize that you aren't present. And a really easy way to do that is to spend enough quality time with myself to give myself that space to figure out whatever I need to figure out so I can then be present when I need to be. I know there's kind of a long way around that, but
no. I mean, I feel like we're on similar wavelengths as far as that goes. I've always concluded that was part of being or trending more towards an introvert than an extrovert. I need my time. I need my reflective time. I don't consider myself a morning person, although I tried really hard to implement a miracle morning of my own. I don't know if you've read that book, but when I did that, I found myself burning the candle at both ends, and which worked. I got a lot of stuff done for a period of time, but then I completely burnt out. Mm-hmm. And I'm still. Right now, the things that I'm experimenting with are more physical activity later in the day, light physical activity, just to get myself, to flip these switches from sedentary, relaxed morning to it's time to go to work. And then when it's time to be done with work, activity to flip the switch so I can be present when everybody gets home.
Yep.
Do you have to, I mean, things get crazy. Do you ever find yourself having to defend Landon time?
When the kids were younger, absolutely. My kids are
Okay.
almost, my daughter will be 14 in July and my son turned 15 in March. And when my kids were really first through about fifth grade, that's when that was really the case. After they hit about sixth, seventh grade, they start spending more time on their own, doing their own thing. But yeah, and I can remember a stretch for about 3 years where realistically 6 days a week, I got about 4.5 hours of sleep because I had to. I mean, there were so many things going on with school and so many things going on with home and the neighborhood kids and all of that. And that's kind of when I figured out that my nighttime, like from 10 to about 12:30 or 1 o'clock, everybody else was sleeping. And so I could just own that. But sometimes, we don't go out a whole lot, meaning Ash and I would rather be at home together than out separately. But you have to have some of that. And there were a couple of times where I absolutely had to just say, look, you can be mad all you want, but I have to go do this, camping with my brother or four-wheeling with my best friend or whatever. It happens. But it all comes down to our skill set, right? It's communication. The ability to listen, be present when you're listening, actually hear what's going on, and then being able to communicate and have that conversation to figure it out. Because that's, at the end of the day, what this is all about.
So kind of coming off of that idea of communication, is there anything in particular that you guys do really well to communicate with one another? And again, is that a learned skill? Is that something you guys had to figure out together, or was it more natural?
There's a couple of things. One, we never go to bed mad. Ever, ever, ever. If any, I have a pretty strong personality. My wife is very laid back and very calm, but calm people lose their shit too. Sometimes their fuse gets all the way and they blow up. One of the things that we've figured out how to do, and it was through a process, is when we find that we're irritated and we're both angry, one of us just starts laughing and then the other one laughs and then it's over, and then we can discuss it. Really, it came from before, and this is an interesting story, and I'll try and keep this short. We dated when I was 26 or 27, we dated for 2 months. She's my little sister's best friend from high school. So she's been around the family since I was 18, 20, something like that. We dated for a month or two and were good friends for about 2 years after that, 2.5 years after that. And when we decided to get together, we actually had a full-on sales conversation to figure out if this is right. We were actually roommates. We were both raising my 2 kids that I have with my ex-wife, and we were really, really good friends. We had an actual conversation of how this would work, what it would take, how we would do it, and the whole 9 yards. And it all came down to communication. And we set the boundaries and the rules of the communication. Open, honest, straightforward, speak your mind. What is it that you actually need? Don't bullshit me. We set all those parameters. And then the first year or two, we had to figure out how that conversation worked. But it was a conscious decision to do that. So really, we communicate about communicating on a regular basis so we stay on the same page. That's key.
Okay. And, I sent you over this pre-interview and I asked, what is something that you guys struggle to do in support of one another or in love of one another. And you said not really anything. Can you pick just one thing that you guys are struggling with or actively working on to better support each other?
Sure. So I'm a certified chef by trade. So right out of high school, I went to college, ACF, hands-on, to become a chef. So I do 98% of the cooking and have for the last 10 years. And since about late February this year, I've been working on 2 of these projects that you're familiar with. And I'm working about 15 to 18 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week doing that, which means that I'm not cooking a whole lot. And Ash doesn't really cook. And the issue is we're not eating like we're used to because I'm not cooking. And it's putting a lot more strain on her having to do the cooking and make sure that the family eats because I'm busy in the office doing stuff. If I had to pick something, if I had to like bring something up, that's one thing that we've talked about in the last couple of months. And it's a time struggle thing. But she also knows where we're going with this, so she supports it. We've eaten more fried egg sandwiches in the last 3 months than I've ever eaten in my entire life because it's quick, it's easy. We've got chickens and she can make it, right?
That's my kind of cooking right there.
Right. So really the time thing. I mean, there's really 3 issues that couples, married couples, especially with children, have issues with: money, sex, and time. And it's almost always one of those 3 issues. And if I had to pick one right now, I'd say it's the time issue. I'm spending a lot of time doing things outside of being involved with the family. But everybody in the family knows that, and we've discussed it at length multiple times. Again, it's the communication piece. Because we did that, it's not a problem. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you touched on something there that I'm really interested in myself as of late. I say as of late, but over the last couple of years, when I became a father, I was carrying a ton of student debt still. I've kind of been chipping away at it, paying the bare minimum, making more money than I thought I'd be making straight out of school, but not really making any progress there. I was enjoying life. But having been in sales for so long and now growing your own thing, what have you found to work really well as far as communicating on finances? How do you guys divvy things up? How do you guys talk about it without it being that sticky issue that so many couples have it be?
I'm not big on compromise. I feel that when, in the general sense of the word, when people compromise, generally one person is feeling left out or something to where they become resentful and it becomes a problem. Generally, both people do, and that eventually becomes a problem. The way that we've been able to get around that is we both have the same end goal. And in the questionnaire that you sent me, which, by the way, I'm totally stealing, that was awesome. Our end goal, mine and Ash's, is our kids are done with high school in another 4 years. And we fully intend on building an Earthship home in the Rocky Mountains, a specific part of the Rocky Mountains, off the grid, trying to be good to Earth and the whole 9 yards. And that's our own little private Idaho, if you will. And we both want to travel the world. We both like the same regions of the world. We're both fascinated by the castles and Europe and, places like that we want to go. And so we both know what our goal is financially. I spend money. Ash doesn't spend money. Like, I would love to spend all the money that we've got, and she's totally okay with not doing that. But again, it came down to a conversation. Before we went into this journey, I left my job at the beginning of the year to go on this path. And we had a conversation about what's important, what's priority, what do we have to do to get there. And instead of looking at it like a compromise, we looked at it like, here's where we want to go. That means this, that, and the other. And we both just follow that. And we communicate about it weekly. We do our budget and pay all of our stuff weekly. Ash manages the budget. The two of us get together and discuss it every time we go through it. She manages the budget in the sense that she actually does our books. And that's kind of how we do it. Money is a tough one. Both people have to give up control, and it has to be in our thing completely. And both people are and here's another thing that Ash and I do really well. It's always, we're both in charge. I back her step parenting my kids. She backs me with, friends and family. We're always backing each other. And it's always, I'm not her boss and she's not my boss. It's the only way that works. The only other way it can work is if it's completely separate and you're both completely 100% in charge of your own stuff. That way works too. But generally, most people aren't good enough with money. One of those two people generally is going to have an issue, and then it falls on the other person.
Okay. Now, you guys are having, it sounds like, weekly money conversations. I would imagine it didn't start like that. Was this a result of it going too long and attention being created? Or was it experience from prior relationships that said, during our sales conversation on whether or not we're going to be a couple, we need to set some ground rules about finances? Mm-hmm. How did that happen?
Both, actually. Like I said earlier, I'm a spender, right?
Version 1.0, and then there was a reason for a 2.0?
Right. I've had a couple of wild swings. Ash is much more calm and grounded and centered and patient than I am, right? Our process in figuring out how to manage our monies really came down to me being bullheaded, doing what I was going to do, being forceful about it, and then it not working the way that I wanted to, right? Because she's more grounded and centered and more patient than I am, it's easy for me to say, she can handle the short-term monies and I can handle the long-term monies, because that takes all of the right now out of it, right? The other part of that is, the other part of that is the growing up aspect. As I've gotten older, my goals have changed. It's not a, what are we going to do this weekend to go camping that we're going to spend $400 or $500 on? It's, what are we doing in 6 months from now, and how can we manage that? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I want to switch gears from the partnering and marriage conversation to a little bit more of a parenting conversation. Sure. But for everybody watching, it looks like we got 7 folks. I don't know if 7 folks have chimed in the comments. Guys, if you guys have questions, let us know. I've got my list of questions, but I'm more curious in answering your questions on family, on selling. Again, the format usually is going to start with a conversation about being a good partner, good spouse, husband, wife, and move into parenting. And at the very end, we'll talk sales, selling, marketing. But be active in the comments. Let us know what you like, what you want to hear about. So as we move the conversation into parenting, now you have a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. That is still over a decade away for me. What are 14 and 15-year-olds into that they're supposed to be into and that they're not supposed to be into?
Ooh. So, right.
Loaded
My daughter,
questions.
right, totally. My daughter is really into horses. My ex-wife rode horses in a club here in Colorado that's called Western Airs. And so it's a big culture here. It's a big club. And she got our daughter into that about 3 or 4 years ago. My daughter spends all of her time either going to school, sleeping, or doing the horse thing. That's her world. My son is trying to find his footing in becoming an adult. He's extremely intelligent. He is very on it, and he doesn't place the same importance on the traditional things that need to be, like schooling. He's into kind of in his head figuring out who he is. He's spent about the last 6 months kind of quietly trying to understand who he is. That's what he's into. And trying to figure out how to get through high school. So those are the things that they're into, that they're supposed to be into. I was kind of a hard ass on my kids through their growing up phase. And what I mean by that is, when my kids were younger and we were at a restaurant, my kids were never the ones that were climbing all over the booth and hollering and screaming in the restaurant and bothering people. They were never like that. Mm-hmm. Because of that, they swung a little bit further in the other direction, trying to push the boundaries on what wasn't appropriate. What we found as helping parents with preteens is that all preteens find the stuff on the internet that they're not supposed to. And it's at a slightly younger age than it was when I'm 40 this year. It's at a slightly younger age than it was when we were kids, because the access to the internet, and so much of that stuff's free. It's scary what they can find on the internet. And to be totally honest, they've both been busted with information that they shouldn't have been. The secrecy that the internet and the apps on the phones these days allows kids to communicate totally privately is astounding. And teaching them where that boundary was was a challenge. Neither of them have snuck out of the house. Neither of them have snuck booze. Neither of them have smoked anything. They're very open and honest with us, but it's the communication with their friends that are the kinds of things that they've gotten in trouble with.
It sounds like there's some serious family architecture going on. Not everybody's kids are super open and honest with them. And if it is, it's almost a shock effect that they're going after, as the kids anyways. How have you been able to foster that openness and frank conversation with your kids to really know what's going on?
I never sugarcoated anything from them. Let me try and preface this to where it comes across the right way. There are certain things that are just not their business, right? They're children. There are certain things that they just don't need to know about. They don't need to worry about. They don't need to stress about. However, we live in Colorado. The whole marijuana thing has been going since before they could speak that word, right? It's a big culture here in our state. Drinking, all of those kinds of things. Parents and family members who do things that they shouldn't do. We've always been very open and honest and direct, even when they were little kids. So-and-so was drinking and driving, and that's not okay. So-and-so was texting. This actually came up this morning. If you're in a car and the person driving the car is texting, that's BS and it's not okay. Just I'm direct, right? And I speak my mind, and I'm going to tell my kids what I think and how I feel about things. And I've always done that. I've tried to keep it at a minimum, but I use the full coloration of our language in my normal life. It's just part of who I am. And I've done that even in front of my kids since they were little. So they understood that it's just language. Well, my kids don't go hide around the corner at school and cuss with their buddies because it's this new thing that they are just now experiencing. You know what I mean? The whole sex talk. Mm-hmm. They're teenagers now. We've been having the sex talk since they were like 7, 8, 9 years old. And it's just a gradual progression of what's age appropriate. But we've always had discussions about taboo things with the kids. And I don't think there's any other way to do it. They have to understand what's out there because they're going to learn it from somebody, whether it's you or their friends. And if they learn it from you, at least you can try and give them what reality is. And that goes from everything from language to political views to, family drama to sex and drugs. It covers the whole spectrum. That's how I fostered it. I treated them like people and their children because they don't have the experience adults have, but there's no difference otherwise.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I find myself wrestling with a lot of those questions. What is age appropriate? How soon do I introduce this concept to my son? How do we talk about it in the house, as a couple before it becomes sprung on you? I find that in any aspect of my life, making decisions before they're thrust upon you makes it a lot easier when you're wrapped up in the emotions. When the kid is screaming bloody murder and wants that thing, and backing each decision. I probably, one thing or another, I might have let him off the hook for, but she's taking the lead on it. We're disciplining. It's time for a timeout. All right, it's time for a timeout. And I'm just going to be as serious as I am, if I were the one to decide it was time for a timeout. So, I know it gives me a lot of food for thought. And I'm sure the folks watching have experienced it or it's crossed their minds as well as at what point is a certain aspect of that conversation, sex, drugs, alcohol, age appropriate. So, I have a question here that I don't plan to ask to everybody, but you've got kids who are into things. Keep them. I would associate it with grit. How do you push them towards the things that they're passionate about so that they can be good at it?
Honestly, it's a reward. It's a reward discipline situation, meaning everybody has their currency, right? You have your currency with your clients. You have your currency with your wife. You have your currency with your friends. We all have a currency. And kids, especially in this day and age, especially at the age my kids are, their currency is their electronics, their ability to have their phone, their ability to have their iPad, their ability to play video games when their stuff's done. It's pretty simple. If you do things on this side of the line, you lose those privileges. If you do things on this side of the line, you've got full access to those privileges. My son is 15. He has the ability to get his driver's permit. He's intelligent enough that he could absolutely go through freshman year of college and comprehend and do the work for college. And he's a freshman in high school. He refuses to turn in his homework. I told him at the beginning of the year that if you knock it out of the park and you get all your stuff turned in and you get these grades, you get your driver's permit on time. And if you don't, then you don't. He made a decision. It's love and logic. Here's the parameters. Here's the boundary. When you do things on this side of the parameters and boundaries, then you get that. When you do them on this side of that line, you get that. And it's a natural consequence. That's how we handle it.
So what kind of his own interests are you pushing him towards and trying to help him explore? Because it sounds like he's at an interesting age, and I think, to me, it sounds very male. It sounds very male teenager that I don't care about school, I care about something else. But some folks follow that path into something else down a road where it creates nothing but struggle for them, and other folks find a way to turn their passions into a paycheck and support themselves and be both successful and fulfilled when they move out of their parents' house after they graduate college. What are those things for him right now, and how do you motivate him, but might be afraid of the ups and downs of chasing your passions, I guess? Is that a conversation that you guys have?
Yeah. He's interested in a small handful of things. He's really interested in guns. Really, 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 really interested in guns from like a target shooting standpoint. He's really, really, really interested in the outdoors from I want to go hang out in the outdoors. And he's really, really, really interested in the higher levels of science, astronomy, what goes on in outer space, biology, those kinds of, and we're not talking about like superficial sciences. We're talking, he thinks along the lines of string theory and black holes and supernovas and, those kinds of high level science things. That's what he's interested in. The way that we do this is the same. The way we teach them everything is these are the things you want to spend your time doing. And when you operate within these parameters, and they're quite loose, you have all the freedom and access to those things that you choose. And when you operate outside of those boundaries and parameters, then you lose some of those privileges. And it's an ongoing slow progression. And the purpose of it is not for me to be able to punish them or to reward them. It's to teach them that no matter what they do, there's a consequence to it. And based on what they choose to do, they can determine the consequences that they deal with. That's the point of it. And the way we push that is we're a pretty tight-knit family unit. My best friend, I call my brother. He and I go to the mountains quite a lot, and we take my kid, and he gets to do all the fun things that he wants to do. And that's how we push curious with him as a teenager.
Do you ever find yourself, because I feel like a lot of folks might just have a hands-off approach to their kids' interests and say, he's going to find or she's going to find what is interesting to them. Mm-hmm. If they're really interested in it, they're not going to need my nudge or my reinforcement on it. Almost as if they're afraid that showing too much interest might burn them out on it or push them too far and too hard on it too soon. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you cut out there the last half sentence that you said. I think I caught it though.
Yeah, the idea was that some folks feel as if they're too involved in their own child's passion, interest area, either it'll turn them off because mom and dad is interested and it's not cool, or it will burn them out by giving them too much support that, again, they have that opportunity to burn themselves out on it.
Right. Yep. Okay. So first, I don't have all the answers, but based on the experience that I've had with my kids is kids' interests change with the weather. And there are certain interests that I have that I would like my kids to have. I'm going to partake in my interests to the level that I'm going to partake in my interests. And if my kids want to join me on that, that's fine. If they've got interests that I'm not interested in, I'm going to support them, but I'm not going to push it. And kind of the way that I do it is it's all about providing them ideas, topics, interests in their path, and then allowing them to lead the charge with it, and then supporting their progress with it. I see these parents, and I'm going to get a little controversial here for a minute, but I see these parents who take these little girls and they do the dress up. I don't even know what it's called, like the pageants and stuff like that. I don't live vicariously through my kids, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Right. And I think I
can see how that would be the driving force in over interest in your kids' things,
right,
is when it's not their interest at all.
Right. I have some fundamental beliefs that I don't think everybody has, and I don't think everybody thinks about. My path is my own. My kids' path is their own. I'm going to do everything in my power to help my child and both my children become the adult that they can be. But at the end of the day, that's their own life and that's their own path. And what they choose to do with it is their own decision. Am I supposed to guide and lead that? Absolutely. Am I supposed to drive that? Not necessarily.
Gotcha. So now you've got a couple of interesting projects going on. I want to, and specifically in the realm of sales, but not for salespeople. What is your latest project?
My latest project is getting clients without being salesy, which is a topic that's built around.
Is that?
And it's a slightly general term. People who are selling and having difficulty selling when they understand what it is that they're doing and how they're approaching things through the analogies that I use, usually it becomes pretty clear. I have a team, Guerrilla Marketing, spelled like the animal. And we've put together a group and we've put together a course. And this is based off of back at the beginning of the year, a handful of people I was having conversations with. I was going down a completely different path. All within a week, about 5 people are like, dude, you need to teach this. And I was like, no, I don't. Nope, I'm done. I'm moving on, different path. And what I found was there's a couple of different camps. There are business owners who are really good at their craft and they're just natural down to earth people, and they're able to have conversations with potential clients in a way that those potential clients don't feel pushed, approached, sold to, and they're able to just have conversations. Sean Manaher is a really good example of this. He's also familiar with the process of selling, even though he's kind of got it, he's developed his own process. Then there's another group of people which make up the majority. They're pretty good at their craft, or they're learning how to be pretty good at their craft, and they're desperate to get clients. And their approach to getting those clients comes from a place of really the wrong motives, the wrong motivations. They need the client so they can do their thing, but really they need their clients so they can get money so they can do their thing. And the approach is wrong. And then there's a small group of people that come from the selling world who have good morals, strong values, don't treat people poorly, and are really able to go through whatever process they've developed and actually sell. Those, I think, are the 3 different categories, 3 different main categories of most of the people you and I are involved with in this online space. And
absolutely,
I'm not training people how to be salespeople. I'm showing people a better, easier, faster way to get clients as a business owner without having to resort to sales tactics. So I hope that answers your question.
And Yeah, I know you're building a course and stuff on this, but what about being salesy?
You cut out there again. Say it one more time.
How do you get clients without being salesy? Is it really as simple as having a conversation?
Well, to get clients, you need two things. You need lead generation and you need to have a conversation, right? There are really high quality ways to go about lead generation, and there's really slimy, nasty, icky tactics to go about lead generation. And let's dive into this before we get into the conversation piece. I have people on a regular basis cold outreach me on Facebook, right? They add me as a friend, and within 5 or 10 minutes, hey Landon, how you doing? What's going on? What do you do about this? How do you handle this? What do you do here? I know a sales pitch is coming because I can click on their profile and see what it is that they do. And okay, that's not that bad. What's worse than that is when somebody friends you and immediately you get a message from them that says, hey Landon, I see your profile and I see what you do and this is really cool and this is what I'm doing now. And I totally think it would be awesome if you did this. So that's kind of one side of it, right? You're bringing your message to people who aren't in the right place to hear your message. And you're doing it. Here's my analogy. It's like dating, right? When you cold outreach to people, it's contact with him or her, and then you begin that process. And it's the process that happens from when you make eye contact to where you're having a conversation, getting to know each other. All the stuff that happens in that interim is the approach. And almost everybody does it in a really bad way. And for those of you who are watching now or who will watch, let me break it down. I'm going to ask you my 3 famous questions. It's Sunday afternoon. You're at your grandmother's house. You're sitting down to dinner. The food's on the table. There's 15 people, friends and family. Everybody's going to sit down. There's a knock at the door. Because you're the middle-aged man, you go and answer the door. And even though there's a no soliciting sign on the door, the guy standing there either can't read or totally just disregards it and goes right into his pitch about, we're working in the neighborhood. We're working on your neighbor's roof. They love us. We noticed this. And he's just going right into his pitch. Food's on the table. My question is, do you enjoy that? Is there a better way for him to approach that conversation? I believe so. The second part is your cell phone rings and you look down and it's a number you don't recognize, but you answer it anyways. And it's somebody on the other end of the phone who they've practiced this sales pitch and it's a bully pitch 1,500 times and you can't get a word in edgewise and they're trying to sell you on a timeshare or on whatever. Doesn't matter. My question is, do you enjoy it when that happens? The third aspect is the one that I went into to begin with. You get cold outreach to on Facebook or LinkedIn, and it comes across in a totally way. Do you enjoy it when that happens? Most people, when they see it from that perspective, go, oh yeah, I don't like that. Well, then my question is, why the hell are you doing that approach? Why are you perpetuating that style of cold outreach? That's salesy. That sucks. That doesn't get anybody who's going to end up being a good client. Can you use those same exact methods and approach it from a different standpoint and come off completely different? Absolutely. That's why you and I connected to begin with. You can cold email. You can cold call. You can cold knock on doors. You can reach out to people cold on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, and you can begin that conversation from a standpoint to where it doesn't come off as salesy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel.
I mean, I think the thing that gets overlooked is qualifying prospects. Like people will forgive you for interrupting their day. People don't get all that mad at TV ads or radio ads. They'll forgive you if you're not trying to push product down their throat that they obviously don't need. And it's tough to to see somebody from afar and view them as a marketing qualified lead, somebody who is a potential buyer, to then figure out whether or not they're sales qualified. Are they in a buying process? Would they ever consider it? Do they have the money? Have they learned what they need to learn to see the value that you offer? That all of that needs to be understood first before, hey, we should sit down. And oftentimes when you approach it from that standpoint, they ask you first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you could do that? How much would it cost for you to do that for me? And boom, you've got permission to sell, and they're going to thank you for interrupting their dinner. You know, not that you're going to you want to be sensitive to the circumstance. If somebody's sitting at home, sitting on the couch, like you can linger and have a longer conversation. But if they're, it's very clear that they're sitting at the table with their family, for the weekly meal, that they all have an opportunity. Leave your card, leave your brochure, follow up, get out of there. There's other wins besides the sale.
Right. Well, what you said, it's interesting. I had this came up on a coaching call with one of my members this morning, was about qualifying. And here's the thing. If you think that everybody could be a qualified prospect for you, you're already dead in the water, and you're going to have a really hard time finding who those people are, because now you have to be the filter for everybody. One of the things that I teach is how to use your personality to qualify people. And by that, the way that I do it is my character, my demeanor is the first qualifying process. If I can use that and leverage that to disqualify people who have no interest, then there's fewer people that I need to deal with. If you look at your marketplace and you just randomly, haphazardly go after people, it makes it really difficult to come off the right way. If you take the time to understand who it is and what they do and what their issues are and where they're at, it makes it really easy to start that conversation. That's the difference between a you and me and a lot of people. And that's the piece I think most people are missing.
Well, and for the doer sellers, or the first time entrepreneurs, or the early stage entrepreneurs, the early stage sellers, there can be a lot of anxiety about such a simple form of lead generation as cold email, phone, door to door. Going up and talking to a stranger is stressful if you have no legitimate reason to talk to them. Right. But if you have a reason that you're going to relieve yourself of a lot of anxiety. And you're also, I'm completely self-centered in the thought process that I don't want to waste my time talking to people I'm never going to be able to convert. So, I should be strategic with whose door I knock on, whose phone I ring, whose email inbox I pop into, because, if it's a waste of my time, that's time I can't spend talking to people I can turn into customers who can become repeat customers. Client acquisition is labor intensive and it's costly, and you need to be efficient. If you're going to convert somebody you can convert over and over and over again. And don't waste your time on the one and done deals.
Exactly. Yep. It's just like dating. And a lot of people have a hard time approaching dating, and a lot of people have a hard time approaching sales because they think there's some secret to it. There's not. Be nice, be kind, be generous, be yourself. Come at it from the standpoint of the only motive is to help the other person get what they want. And sometimes that's that they don't want your thing, and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I like the bar analogy. I use it myself, but then I would build upon it. You have the direct sales aspect to it, that going up and talking to somebody, an idea, in that case, a date, get the phone number, follow up, send her some cute text messages to entice her to go out to dinner with you.
Mhm.
But there's layers to that. I mean, you probably don't go to the bar by yourself. You've got a couple of friends who know your story. Lean back and let them tell the story.
Yep.
Give other people opportunity to talk and build you up. Some people might call that public relations or
Right.
influencer marketing.
Yep.
To hear somebody else talk really well about you as opposed to you just speaking really well about you, it carries a different air about it, and it adds a different kind of credibility, and that's persuasion on a level that sometimes the person receiving it doesn't even pick up on. So there's a lot of layers to it, and we need to be cognizant of that. Direct sales, selling, that's important. It's the end of the funnel, if you will, but there's a lot of things that you can do to work more efficiently and grow your funnel and have more things flow into it, so that end of the funnel conversation, the sales conversation, happens very easy, and purchases happen because they make sense as the next step. So I feel like I've commandeered the last couple of minutes of this, and I want to hear more from you. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I have three major questions that I want to ask you left. What is your number one business tip?
You look at the sales process like this. Your job as a seller is to help somebody down their own path, to answer their own questions, and provide them the space to make a decision. If that's your job and you approach selling that way, it takes all of the pressure off of you because you're not putting any pressure on your prospect.
Awesome. Question number 2, what is the number one family tip you would give to sellers?
The number one family tip would be to communicate and listen. Don't wait for your turn to speak. Really listen to your family and understand what it is that they need, and then work it out with them.
Awesome. Where should people go to connect with you and not sell you stuff?
That's funny. You can find me in my group on Facebook. That's probably where I spend the majority of my time. That is Getting Clients Without Being Salesy. And there's a bit.ly link to make it easy. And this will probably drive a little bit of curiosity. It's bit.ly, bit.ly/gorilla juice. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Trying to put that up on the screen here. Oh, there we go. Boom.
You got it.
Awesome. Very cool. Hey, Landon, I appreciate you making time for us. This was an awesome conversation. For those who aren't already a part of the Facebook group, go over there and check it out. Landon and I had a nice conversation on prospecting and cold emailing earlier this week. Got a lot of attention. You should check it out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Any parting words, Landon?
Follow what it is that you think is the right thing to do.
Awesome. Until next time, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Brendan.